What is the sheriff's role in an eviction? Imagine a landlord wins a court case, but the tenant refuses to leave. Who steps in to make sure the law is followed and the property is returned? That's where the sheriff comes in. The sheriff's role in an eviction begins only after the landlord has gone through the legal process and received a court order called a writ or warrant of possession. This document gives the sheriff the authority to enforce the eviction. It is not the sheriff who decides if the tenant should leave. They simply carry out the court's order. Once the court grants the eviction, the sheriff will usually give the tenant at least 24 to 48 hours notice. This notice informs the tenant of the exact date and time the sheriff will arrive to enforce the eviction. It's important for both landlords and tenants to keep track of these notices to avoid surprises. On the scheduled day, the sheriff will arrive at the property to ensure the tenant leaves peacefully. If the tenant refuses to leave voluntarily, the sheriff has the authority to physically remove the tenant and their belongings from the property. This can include changing locks or securing the premises to prevent re-entry. The sheriff also has the responsibility to secure the property after eviction. This might involve changing locks or installing barriers to make sure the tenant cannot re-enter without permission. Their goal is to carry out the eviction lawfully and without conflict, protecting everyone involved. Many legal mistakes happen because people misunderstand the sheriff's role. For example, some landlords try to evict tenants without a court order or sheriff's assistance, which is illegal. Others may not give proper notice or misunderstand that the sheriff does not decide the case but only enforces the court's decision. To avoid these errors, landlords must first get a court judgment and a writ of possession before requesting sheriff assistance. Both parties should keep copies of all notices and court documents. Tenants should know that the sheriff will give a final notice before removal, and landlords should coordinate with the sheriff's office to schedule the eviction properly. Understanding that the sheriff acts as a neutral enforcer helps ensure the eviction process stays legal and fair. Their role is to uphold the court's order, making sure the property is returned to the landlord without unnecessary conflict or legal trouble.